Alright, so today, this is the overview video of our virtual production projects with the world's worst XLR cord, I think. So this video is going to be, this is a Patreon only video, so you'll probably get this. I'm going to probably edit it down for YouTube, but this is the Patreon version of this video. So what I'm going to do is, this might end up being a little long. I might go through quite a few things. So I'm definitely going to use the YouTube chapters. So definitely use that if you want to skip ahead or refer to something in particular. But what I'm going to go through is the setup. We had both the camera and the set and everything, green screen, lights. Then I'm going to do the digital, so how everything was hooked up and synchronized and all that sort of stuff. And then I'm going to go through the workflow, so sort of start at how we made the environment, what a shot looks like, what we did post, all that sort of stuff. Then some thoughts, and then obviously I asked you guys on Patreon if there was any questions you had, and a few of you got back to me, so I'll then try and answer as many of those as I can. Alrighty, so the first thing was the actual setup. How were we doing that? So, for our actual setup, what we had was the camera we were using the ARRI Amira, just because of the cameras we had, a couple of Canon Cinema EOS cameras, some FS7s, and then the Amiras, two of them, actually. We could only get the Amira working, so we couldn't get the FS7 working over its SDI feed, and we didn't have time to go get one of those extra backpacks that go on the back that give it more SDI plugs. Didn't have any Blackmagic cameras, and timecode and Genlock over HDMI is untested for me, so Amira it was the most expensive. So don't drop them; they're very expensive. Lens-wise, we're using Zeiss CP.3 lenses, just standard cine lenses, high-speed ones. So, and then I had my computer on set. So our green screen we had was I'm pretty sure it's 3 meters tall. I never actually measured it, but looking at like a person compared to it, pretty sure it's 3 meters tall and it was 5 meters wide. 5 meters? Yeah, okay, that I didn't measure it, but it was big. It was pretty big. Lighting it, we had I think 4 from memory LEDs over the top, just on C-stands looking back down, and then we had 2 RE2Ks either side of that. We had some diffuser. We were trying to large green screens are nice, but it is a nightmare to light evenly. So we had big diffusers on those 2Ks, and then we had cutters because they were spilling like no tomorrow on the side of them, so that the light doesn't spill back in. For our talent light, we were just using some little LEDs. We used some panel ones, but then we also used these other Dido ones. They're like the single chip LED ones that you can put modifiers on. And then we had an ARRI HMI at the very back, and they were just bouncing that off the roof for some ambience. Also found out, I've been on set with HMIs a couple of times. They spill out of the visible light range and into the ultraviolet light range, and you can get sunburnt from them. Something I did not know until this shoot, even though I'd used them quite a few times. So a little scary, those lights now. So LEDs are probably better. So for the camera, we went handheld, and then we had the dolly. We did have a jib, but the jib wasn't working properly, so we just packed it back up again because we weren't risking a $70,000 camera on a jib that wasn't pristine. That was about it in terms of camera gear. We used a 10 meter SDI cable, which worked out plenty fine. a few extra light modifiers and cutters just to try and... We didn't do the best job at matching the environment light to the like the Unreal light to the real light. We didn't have any Unreal controlled lights at the time either. Obviously lighting is half the battle in terms of making green screen actors look like they're in the environment, so sort of dropped the ball a little bit there, which is a bit disappointing, but yeah, we gave it a shot. So in terms of tracking, we were just using the Vive. I had one of my Vive trackers. A few people ask me why I mount it the way I do, because I mount it sort of looking forward. First of all, that is the way Vive recommends you mount those trackers. That also aligns so its Z-axis is also Unreal's Z-axis, up and down. The other thing is, when you mount it upwards, and if you imagine it upwards, the camera's on your shoulder, for example, the Vive base stations are only a little bit higher than that, then all those little indents with the sensors are sort of occluded by themselves and the prongs sticking upwards. So, mounting them forward like that, they sort of, as many of those sensors as possible get seen by the base station. So the base station, it's complex how it sort of shoots out lasers and stuff like that, and it gets picked up. We were using Steam 2.0 base stations, so we used a non-recommended method from Steam or Vive. So they recommend putting a base station either sort of diagonal to each other, and that works great for 360 stuff, you know, and so that's VR, right? So you can walk around, you can spin around, no matter, it's tracking all the same. Now, for us, considering the green screen is at the very front of our scene, the camera doesn't really point away from that, so that means that the base station behind it is actually never going to see the tracker, so it's pointless. So what we did instead was I took a book out of Oculus's, the original Oculus's tracking setup, and we had both the base stations at the front in like a V setup. So they were 5 meters apart from each other at a 45-degree angle, and with those two, we actually found we could go further than 5 meters back with the dolly shot. We went like 8 meters almost, I think, in the end. And so we actually managed to get a bit more out of just 2 base stations, which was pretty cool. That's all going into the computer. We were running, what did we have? We had a 2080 Super in that one. I didn't want to bring my 3090 down. And we were using the Blackmagic SDI 4K, just the basic one with the 3 SDI plugs. And it worked fine. We were only going 1080p for this one, because, 4K isn't easy. And then we were going out to some director viewfinders, as well as a Ninja 2 recorder, because that's all we had in hand, and then to a Blackmagic Video Assist on the camera, which in hindsight we probably should have recorded on that instead of the Ninja 2, but I mean, both were just recording basic ProRes, so I don't think there's that big a difference. 1080 is 1080. So our digital setup, so the Amira went into Unreal through the SDI 4K, we came out of that, and went into like an SDI router, that went into a Swit Director's monitor, some sort of 17-inch never heard of brand, and then that also went back to the camera, and we plugged into, we had a Blackmagic 7-inch Video Assist, just as that's a nicer monitor than the Ninja 2, so that was on the camera, so our camera op could actually see the Unreal scene as well. And then we also had the Ninja 2, which was obviously recording. And we're curious, all the behind the scenes stuff was shot on C100s. Or C200s, not sure. So that's how the chain of things went. So the workflow for our setup, so we started by making the scene. Again, we used Liam Tart's kit, which looks modular but isn't. So we spent a lot of time. We thought it would be easier using that than actually making it from scratch, but it probably would have been the same, to be honest, because we had to edit those pieces so much. So we threw that together. We used multi-user editing, all 4 of us flying around. I'm confused as to why not more people are using it. Like, it's just changed completely how we work, especially because we're not all in the same state in Australia. You know, we're all spread all around Australia at the moment. And it's definitely something we're going to keep using even when COVID's done and we're all back together. So we built the scene like that, went in, set everything up. Let me think. All right, so what we did was when we, on the day, plugged in the camera, checked that's working. First thing we did was calibrate the Vive. So the way we did that was we just ran through this standing. So we didn't do the room setup, we just did the standing setup in Steam VR, because we don't need the Steam Chaperone or anything like that. So that was simply a matter of, we marked on the floor, because it's like, place your headset in the center of your area. So we marked that as that because that's where the center is going to be. And then we placed it on the ground and set it to 0 and hit calibrate. The next thing was like putting the goggles on and then using the controller and touching the ground and just making sure that it is in fact on the ground, sort of thing. It's not hovering. So it's like, if it's on the ground in real life, is it hovering or is it on the ground in Unreal? Or in Steam VR, sorry. Once that was done, our DP came in. We got the lights on the green screen all proper. They chose their lenses. We started doing some practice shots. He exposed his shot, and then once he'd exposed it and we got that running, then we did the key. Now, we were just using composure. We weren't using anything else. No pixitope, no asymmetry, none of that. Just basic ass in composure. And so we got our key down pat. Obviously, Genlock's already running. What we also did was we used the VR goggles for lighting reference, so we could look around the scene, and then we'd start, we'd get a stand-in actor, we'd start setting up how we think the lighting should be, practicing the camera moves. There's a lot of practicing to make sure, do we go, so you don't go out of the tracking volume, so the lights work, all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff. Now, we weren't tracking focus. I have an idea of how to do Vive with the live link, but we didn't. So what we'd do is we'd practice through the shots. We'd decide where our focus was, and then the DP would tell me, hey, the lens is at 15.5 feet. And so then I'd set the camera in Unreal to 15.5, or I would convert it to centimeters, and then set the Unreal camera to that equivalent in centimeters. And that's how and then they just don't change focus for the shot. So, sort of works. One thing to note is Cine lenses are T-stops, regular lenses are F-stops. There is a difference, and they don't line up. They'll be close depending on the lens. I asked Zeiss, because they make the lenses, but they're on holidays, so I haven't heard back from them. I asked on Facebook, and people started fighting, as well as 30,000 people telling me the difference between T-stop and F-stop, which doesn't make sense, because it's like, I already know that's why I asked. Didn't receive a solid answer. Some people said just use the T-stop as the F-stop, because Unreal uses F-stop. We just eyeballed it on the day. We didn't get it right, so that's something I've got to look into. Hopefully Zeiss are just like, oh yeah, these are the numbers, and we're like, oh cool, and we just remember that. The other thing to keep note is the mirror, and I can guarantee you it's not the only camera that does this, changes how much of the sensor it uses at different resolutions. So you need to look that up, like a chart of that. We found Ari has a chart of that. And then match that with the Unreal camera. Otherwise, your lenses are going to look slightly, you're going to have slightly different FOVs. Now, there is a bit of wiggle room in there, but, it's nice to get exact. Then, once we were done and everything was ready, our actress came in. Lovely lady. She was told to act bored like it's everyday thing on the space station, nothing special. She looked very unenthusiastic. I'm not sure if that was because she's a good actor or if she's a bad actor. I have no idea. So But she did a nice job. She did what she was told. Recording, so we recorded on the Amira, we recorded on the Ninja 2, which was recording the final comp, and in Take Recorder in Unreal, so we had all of those things. And we'd go through, I think we got in 3 hours, the actress was there, we got 8 takes and 4 different setups done, so like not too shabby, especially considering we didn't really have any plans of shots prior to the start of that day. So I'm quite surprised. So it was quite interesting. A few things, the Ninja 2's Unreal's key is pretty crappy. Like, I thought we had a nicely lit green screen, and it was just mainly it just eats away at the edges of the person, because Unreal doesn't treat like the edge versus the not edge. I guess it can't like detect it. It just keys the whole thing as one. Is my best explanation of that. So it just doesn't have the tools in it to do that, because we're just using the material system in Unreal. So it was not very good. The other thing is we need to work on what we're looking at doing next is matching Unreal camera's dynamic range with the Amira's dynamic range, because obviously the Amira captures, is it 12 stops of dynamic range? I think maybe 14. It captures a certain dynamic range, and then Unreal's tone mapper reduces its linear render into a certain number of stops as well, but they didn't match, and so we're going to go through again and come up with a quote-unquote camera profile for the Amira that matches its dynamic range, its latitude, and its colors. That way they match up a lot better, because we had there was like some blown out highlights and some overexposure and just some very contrasty color coming out of Unreal, and then like a completely different image coming out of the Amira, and then we're smashing together going, oh, that sort of looks alright. But because the keyer wasn't great, what we ended up doing is we just rendered out linear XRs out of Unreal, because then you can tweak it to your heart's extent, the latitude and the dynamic range afterwards, and we comped it with RE footage in Nuke afterwards, and that created a much nicer result. And I think that is the way most things are going to do, because when you really think about it, like, for it to work, we got to send out Rec 709 out of the RE, so we don't even get RE log C, and then we got to comp it, and then we can't change anything, and we can't have RTX on or anything like that. So we decided in the end, we can shoot RE raw, log C, we can get linear XRs out of Unreal, we can push RTX to the limit, take hours to render a shot, and comp them in the final, and it looks so much better. And obviously we're still saving all that time with all that time with the camera tracking, because we've already had that camera tracked, and yeah, we've had all that time saved, but we can still give the they've still got the same time code, because the time code goes through the loop back out of Unreal. So we can give them the Ninja 2, the ProRes, the ones we recorded, the already comped ones from Unreal. Doesn't look very pretty, but they can start editing to that together, and then once all the post is done on the actual nice versions, we can give them that instead. And obviously they can go through and color grade it. So I think in the end that's the way to go. Even if rumor is Unreal's getting a new keyer in UE5, fingers crossed. Or Pixitope, Xsymmetry, Disguise, an Ultimatte hardware keyer. Any of those things, the thing is you are missing like half the camera's features, like log recording, raw recording for RE or Blackmagic or whatever. You're losing all these things by recording the straight out Unreal. So unless you're doing a live broadcast, I think it's probably just worth it for the extra features. But that being said, you still get, the director can still sit there and look at the monitor and make choices based off the monitor as it's happening in real time. So I think that's the balance we're going to strike up. We're trying. Pixitope only works with an Aja card, so we're getting an Aja card loaner, and we're going to try Pixitope fingers crossed Unreal has new Kia and that's better. But I think at the end of the day, that like even if they're like great, we're still sort of limited to these. We've sort of put these artificial limits on ourselves with running in real time and all that sort of stuff, when realistically we don't really need to. So that's how I'm viewing this, and I think that's how we're going to be doing it moving forward. I think that was everything I'd mentioned or wanted to mention. So a few questions from I can't even remember who. I'll find your names because might as well. Oh, they're right here. Alrighty. So Pixel Bokeh Productions, Real Time Cinematics, Jake Jones. Is there someone else? And Dane Black. Sorry about that. And Peter Wallace. I think that's all. Yep, that's everyone that asked questions. So I will go through and answer your guys' questions now. Okay, so I didn't write who. I just sort of distilled these down. How many? We were using 2 base stations for this in that V setup, and to be honest, unless you plan on spinning the camera all the way around, I think that's probably enough. To be honest, I don't think if we had 4, I think we'd mount them sort of out perpendicular to the tracking volume looking in, just so we get a bit more back. But I don't think, I don't think we need that many more. The thing is, Vive, it was so difficult to use, and so unreliable. Like, I don't know how great, like, we still haven't done solid tests about how good the tracking is, but just the usability about it, really rules it out for any professional work. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's just not good enough for, green screen. End display LED volumes when you're shooting, because the frustum gets rendered wider than what the camera actually captures. You've got some wiggle room in there, so you can actually use it without even being synced up, because you've got that wiggle room to work around with. So apparently it works great for that, but trying to get it so pristine, because green screen needs it like dead on, just its usability alone was just a nightmare. So one company I know was using Mosys, another one's getting Stipe. We're looking at OptiTrack, so we can do motion capture as well. Hopefully that's more solid. We're going to give that a crack. Someone else asked about system calibration. So beyond the Vive calibration, the main thing we did was we had a cube in the scene, and then we had the actor, the camera, so when she was, for example, trying to sit on a bed, so we had her sitting on a stool, had the camera. We then grabbed a tape measure and measured from the cameras or from the tracker to her, and then I got a cube in Unreal and made it the same length, and then literally sort of lined it up with one side in front of the camera and then the other side, and that's where she'll be about, and then offset everything so it was on the bed. And then they moved the camera. They moved the actress and they moved everything back, and that offset went off. That's why it doesn't actually look like she's sitting on the bed in the shot. I was so annoyed about that. That was the main way of doing it. The other way we did it was they got a light stand and set it to a certain height. So the bench in the scene in that kitchen area, we measured it in Unreal. It was 93 centimeters tall, I think. I can't remember. So they just got a tape measure out, measured a light stand the same height, put it in the real scene where they wanted the bench to be, so the actress to walk up to it, and then we just moved the offset of the world around until it was that height, and the light stand matched the height of the bench. And so that was main ways. We're trying to come up with a more solid way and reliable way of doing it, but that's pretty much how we did it. We did no lens calibrations, which isn't a problem. These are low dispersion lens. Low dispersion? I think that's the name. It's not distortion, it's dispersion. You know, these are low. Okay, or just use distortion. You know, these lenses are supposed to be low distortion. They're not supposed to be. The widest we went was like 24 mil. So 24 mil on a super 35 sensors, like it shouldn't be that bad. I think lens calibration is only really an issue when you're comping stuff on top of the actress, which we did do. And then you match that with like a lot of serious camera moves. But at the end of the day, we couldn't tell whether that was issues with the vibe tracking not being good enough, or was with the lens distortion or something. Like there was just were not sure about that. And like I said, we need to come up with a way of calibrating the cameras. Dynamic range, but obviously we didn't do that at the time, so that's why it looked a little off. Someone else asked about the virtual space to Unreal. Same thing, like the cubes, just using real world objects and Unreal objects and making sure they're, you know, making the two the same height and then trying to line them up pretty much, which seems to work pretty good. Gen locking and SDI. So this one's a funky one. Unreal was gen locked the mirror, but the mirror doesn't send out a gen lock signal. I'm gonna let you figure that one out because we couldn't. What I think is Unreal's just using the wrong word, or Unreal is not following the SMPTE gen lock standard or whatever. So with this simple setup, like it sounds complex, but this is simple. Like if you're using lots of cameras and stuff, so you're using multiple cameras or a tracking system that can be gen locked, like OptiTrack. You need an external sync card because we're using the Vive, and the Vive just is locked to Unreal. We were just using the time code coming out of the mirror, and then Unreal was picking that up and then gen locking that. So that's about it. So also asked about NDI and N-Display. We weren't using N-Display because we're not using LED walls. That being said, I've noticed a few companies that aren't even using N-Display, and they are using LED walls. So I'm curious as to how that works out. And then also NDI, no NDI. No NDI. I'm doing a tutorial on NDI, but no NDI in this project. Someone asked about the keying process and compositing, so we're just using the basic Unreal compositor and keyer, the material one, and we just had a foreground and a background layer, and then we're just comping them in a material and setting them back out again. Nothing too fancy either. So it was, whether that's the best method or not, you know, like we weren't using a plain system. You know, it was a 2D key. It was a post key, so there was no shadows from the actress in the scene, and there was no reflections from the actress in the scene. Whether we try it with or not, the problem is that really is pointless for a post-production workflow, because those reflections and stuff don't get recorded because the incoming video doesn't get recorded. So I guess it might not be worth it. I'm not sure. That might be something I'll look into, but I'm also wary of looking too far into things at the moment, because apparently Unreal 5 is just around the corner. So I don't want to invest all this time and then Unreal 5 sort of throws the book out and starts again. Someone asked about the HMD. That's an interesting question that we didn't think about at the time. It was just sitting on the desk next to the computer, which technically is outside of the tracking volume. I don't think it was being tracked properly, but it also didn't cause any issues that I know of. So we used it pretty much for setting up the, like calibrating the thing. Because otherwise, if you don't have a HMD, it like defaults to one of the base stations or something, and it's an absolute nightmare. This way, it just makes life so much easier to calibrate it. But yeah, other than that, it doesn't really do anything else. It is not the 000 of the world. Like, when you move it, the 000 does not move with it. You know, otherwise... Otherwise, your camera wouldn't actually move in a VR game if that were true. Yeah, that's not. I don't think it wasn't really required during the shoot. We did use it for VR lighting, so that our DOP and our director and stuff could look around in the scene. But beyond that, yeah, we didn't use it. Was it worth the 900 Australian dollars for a Vive Cosmos Elite? Probably not, because it's a pretty shitty VR headset outside of using it to this. I'm very angry about that. Buy Oculus if you want to play VR games or do VR stuff. And then the last question we had was, how are you tracking the actors? So again, we're not using plane systems, so we're not tracking the actor. I thought about it. Obviously, then you can do some more interesting compositing stuff, but then how do you hide a Vive tracker on the actress? I think it could be easier with, say, an OptiTrack, because you can just hide tiny dots on them somewhere. Again, I don't know how well that would work either, but maybe you could integrate it into costume or something like that. So yeah, that's my complete overview of this this scene. I'll give you a quick tour of the Unreal project. So the Unreal project is going to be available for download. It even has all the shots in it that we recorded with the tape recorder. So if you want to crack rendering them out, it got pretty mangled. As you can see, the lighting has disappeared, and I mean it worked when we used it, and we've already rendered out, and so I'm not going to there is this Retro's 80s pack there's some assets from the Retro 80s pack from Decagon in here, because we used some in here. That is a paid pack, so if you do plan on using these assets outside of this environment, please go buy it, otherwise it's illegal. Everyone could get in trouble, and he does a damn good job, so he deserves the money as well. I pretty much have all of his stuff at this point. So this is a scene we were using. So everything, the tracker and everything is loaded up into a sub-level, the VP sub-level. Yeah, here we go. So we did end up using LiveLink XR in the end. It was we used it originally. There was too many issues. We switched back to Steam VR, and then we started having issues with that. And then 4.26 was officially released, and then we switched back to LiveLink XR, and it was a little better. So in the end, we used that. So this contains. So the idea being that you can put this VP sublevel as a sublevel to any map, and then just use the virtual production stuff. So this just has a cine camera, our composer setup, some offsets. Let's go back to the map. I can just put that in there. There we go. So what does our blueprints look like? That's a good question. Me. So there's the VR porn. So that's just for the lighting. There's no blueprint stuff in there at all. It's just like a camera and the motion controls, and that's it. That was just for looking around. Otherwise, we have my original camera tracker in here from the first video I did, which did not work. And rather than figuring out why, I was just threw it out and was like, okay, we'll do it again. So I then attempted to sort of strip it back and then rebuild it, which got this, which was using the Steam VR, I think. And then I threw that out because that wasn't working. And then we arrived on the mirror tracker. So this has so I mentioned how to. Oh, that's unplugged. I mentioned in my LiveLink XR tutorial how to sort of not have it affect the root component, but then also, but then it won't work in play mode. So we did not do anything in play mode. Everything was running outside of play mode, which is interesting, but worked. Made things a lot easier because they were like this wall. You're probably wondering why on earth is that? Because they were trying to do the dolly shot, and they're like, oh hey, can you just shrink the size of that room? And so we just grab these walls and pull them in, which was great because we could do that without the camera stopping. And the other thing is, every time you hit play and then go out of play mode, it stops sending a signal to the Blackmagic card, and it's so annoying. But if you never enter play mode, then that's never a problem. So yeah, that's how we did all that. And then it also meant that instead of using an Xbox controller or something to move the camera around, if I find it, there we go. I literally just grab the offset here and then like move it around, like so yeah, we're using the Live Link controller component running in real time. One thing to make sure to make the offset work is it has to have the, where is it? Subject representation. Transform role. Live Link. Here we go. Where it says world transform, just untick that so it uses local transform instead. So then what we also have is this node, which someone in the YouTube comments, I'll find it and screenshot it and put it up, pointed me onto this, so I didn't have to find it. It is one of these events, and so this is on Live Link updated, and so this gets updated every time the Live Link is triggered, and because it's updated, and because it's updating in the editor, this gets called in the editor. So we're doing a basic smooth because we had some hitches with the Vive, and so I just did this. It's set really high, so it should be very minimal smoothing. But that sort of slightly smoothed out some random hitches. We have one public variable, which is our cine camera. We also have so we're doing this smooth on the so obviously it's setting the default, the root one. What we are then doing is I have these arrows in here, and this bottom arrow is like for the offset. Oh, there we go. And so I still managed to do the offset. So we're setting the root component's position. I'm then getting the camera which is the one with the offset, its transform, setting it to our public cine camera variable. And then this just here is part of the smoothing. So we're still doing a set actor location and rotation. We're doing a set actor, so this is a world space one. That way we do not create a dependency on this in the take recorder, so we can record the camera without recording this. And so then that camera will lock itself to that bottom one, if it has a camera selected, does it? Oh, you know what? Because the Live Link isn't running. Yeah, I don't. Okay. So it'll be on that, and then so that is just parented to the camera offset. This is just an empty actor here. It isn't a blueprint or anything. It's just an empty actor. And so as I move that around, it moves that around, and then the camera is stuck to that, and so that gets moved around. And then that's how we did it. And then so they were like, oh, spin that around. So I just do that. And the camera was looking out now. And then that's how we ran it outside of play mode, which was pretty good. I think that was it. And then, yeah, just with take recorder, all you have to do is add the camera, like our main camera, and that's it. You don't have to add the tracker, you don't have to add the offset, none of that. It's beautiful. What else have we got in here? Oh, the last thing is the gen locking. So I'm going to do a proper tutorial on the gen lock, but essentially what you do is you want to create a new blueprint. Go ahead and search for either Blackmagic or Azure, depending on what one you're using. You want to make a Blackmagic time step and a Blackmagic timecode provider blueprints. Go ahead, open them up, and they just have this like choose the port. This computer doesn't have the SDI card in it, but essentially choose the port that the genlock's coming in on or the time code's coming in on. So that could either be the same as the videos coming in on, or the reference port instead. Then go ahead into your project settings and then type time step. And then under here you've got custom time step, set that to the Blackmagic one. And then the timecode provider, also set that to the Blackmagic one you made, like so. and then it will sync itself. So you can go ahead and I think it's developer tools. Yeah, there's timecode provider. So because I don't have the card in, it won't show it. And then there's also one called Genlock somewhere. There, Genlock. Like so. And so that will tell you if it's genlocked and tell if it's timecode. If these are not running, then video will not come into the engine. So make sure, like, if you turn off the camera, turn back on, you have to reinitialize these before you get a video feed into the editor, like so. And then when you also hit show FPS, it'll actually show you up here. It'll say genlocked. And so that's how you genlock. That's the basics of it. We also have the composure set up in here if you want to have a crack at that. That is, so we just got a target camera, camera feed. I need to redo my composure tutorial because I sort of did it a little wrong. Composure can pick up the elements without rendering them to texture. Not that causes that big a performance hit, but that is something to note. And then we have our material in here. There you go. But yeah, that's the project, I think. Our little space station. Oops, there is a light blocker all the way out here. There it is. But yeah, go ahead and have a look at it. You can have a look at the original map where all the assets were from. You can render out some of the shots we had. They are in there as well. Cinematics, takes. Here we go. Here's a take. You know, so you could go ahead and render them out if you wanted to. Just like that. Otherwise, yeah. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this isn't too long. Hopefully this covers everyone's questions. If you have, I'm not going to do another video on this, but if you do have questions, just pop it as a comment on Patreon, and I will do my best to answer it. I am technically on holidays, so that what that probably sounds to you is, oh, he doesn't want to be disturbed. What it sounds to me is, oh, I'm not busy, so I can do this stuff. Oh, that's hot. But yeah, thank you for watching. Hopefully that fills you in with some of this stuff. And hopefully it was somewhat useful for you, or interesting at least. And then yeah, you can go ahead and download this project for sure. Use it if you end up using this map or something. I'd love to see a video of it. Love to see what you guys are up to. I might even post it to my Patreon feed so everyone else can have a look, if you don't mind. But yeah, go ahead and do that. But otherwise, thank you for watching.